Welcome to the meeting, everyone. So this is going to be our public involvement plan meeting for September 17th, 2024. We have a little bit of agenda. Lyons is going to start with an update on the public involvement plan.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening. For those of you who I haven't met, I am Lyons Witten. I am an LSP with OHI Engineering in Amherst. Done a lot of work throughout Western Massachusetts in the last 25 years. And currently working for the Neighborhood Action Group, putting together a revised PIP plan that will be implemented by the city of Greenfield. And when that document is complete, which I think we can accomplish next week, it will go out for public review. That's currently being reviewed by Susan and Glenn. They've looked at the draft, and I have a couple little tweaks to it, and then we'll get it out for public review probably sometime next week. There's a public review process for that, so it'll go out to the public. Another meeting similar to this one to discuss that document and its implementation, and any questions folks have about all that will be the subject of another meeting. And there's public notification required for that meeting ahead of the meeting, as with all public meetings. So we'll get all that in play hopefully sometime next week, and we'll have another meeting such as this to discuss the particulars of it after everyone has a chance to review it. This evening, and so when that process of finalizing that document is complete, then I will no longer work for LNAG. That will be the end of my contractual obligations with LNAG, and I will switch hats and start working for the city to implement the public involvement plan, similar to what I'm doing right now, but in a more public way. And hopefully the tenant at the former Lunt property and their environmental consultant will be present at those future meetings to provide their take on the results of the sampling and investigation work that has been ongoing in a sporadic way for the last couple of years, and speeded up most recently this year with some quarterly sampling. It would be good to hear their input and where they think they're going to go next with that. And so when I'm done, we finalize the PIP plan and it's out in a public repository, then I'll switch hats and start working for the city to implement the PIP plan and make sure that the public stays informed in a more regular fashion about what's going on and has the opportunity to provide input into future activities involved with assessment and remediation at the Lunt facility property. So if I could share my screen.
You should be able to. I just allowed share screen.
There we go. All right. So can folks see this map of the neighborhood? Pink blob in the middle? Is that visible to everyone? Okay.
Yes.
Good. So this base map was produced by O'Reilly, Talbot, and Oaken for 401 Liberty, the tenant at the property, several years ago. I think it's a 2000 base map, year 2000. I'm sorry, year 2020. Might be 2022. At any rate, it had some groundwater sampling results on it. And in January, February of this year, OTO went out and did some additional groundwater sampling in the first quarter of this year. They went out again in May and did additional groundwater sampling in the second quarter. And they've just gone out and done, well, they're about to go out and do the third round of quarterly sampling. And they shared the results in, oops, I get dark. They shared the results in tabular form with the mayor and LNAG, but they did not produce an updated map that makes it easier to see what's going on. So I took the new results and I tagged them on to an image of the old map. And I'm going to zoom into the center here. And we'll just scoot around a little bit. So where there are numbers in, well, let's just zoom in to the middle. So where there are numbers in black, those are the base map. Those are the historic groundwater results for a particular well. So here in the center at LS 19, back in 2012, there were some rather high values of 107,000. And you can see a year later in 2013, they went down to 3,000. And then in 2019, they were at 2,700. Well, recent sampling in the first quarter of this year shows them back up at 41,000. And in May, the results are 34,000. This just shows that there's some movement in contaminants. So this map illustrates the concentrations of trichloroethylene, a volatile organic compound, the most prevalent volatile organic compound at this site. There are a few others, but their concentrations are essentially so small, and they when they show up at all, they're usually show up where TCE is really high. So if we map TCE, we're mapping the essentially total volatile organic compound, even though it's just the TCE. So where they're shown, where the results are shown in black and the dates are in black, those are the OTO base map. And where the numbers are in red, those are the most recent sampling results from this year, where the well name, like this one, MWD, is in red and there is no black above it. That's a new well that was drilled in January of this year or December last year. It's brand new and first sampled in January. This well up at the top center, MWA, is essentially drilled in the same location as LS 24. But LS-24 got destroyed at some point. Either an excavator backed over it, or a snowplow took it out, or somebody didn't see it, or I don't know what happened, but it no longer exists. We have the data from it in 2012 and 13, but it can no longer be sampled. So it was reinstalled in January this year. We got MWA as the shallow well. The results are pretty low, but there's also a deep well, MWA D for deep, in this case. Right next to it, where the screened interval's down another 20, 30 feet below the shallow well. And you can see that the results are quite high compared to the shallow. So where the results are highlighted in yellow, they exceed current standards for current use at the site. That doesn't mean that the rest of the site is clean, but it definitely shows where the worst of the contaminants are currently known to exist. And so that would be here at area A, near monitoring well A and AD, down here at M in the center at MWC, where there hadn't previously been a monitoring well. Over here by the road at LS19, that's down here right by the road. If you can see my cursor going around and around. And also over here at MW104, in the road, adjacent to the storm sewer. There have been some rather high values in 2013 and 19, and those came back up in 2024. Oddly enough, not in the January sampling round, but in the May sampling round. You might ask why, and I'm wondering the same question. Why does it go up and down that much? And it may be due to seasonal fluctuations in groundwater elevation. There's more groundwater, it comes up. Drier conditions like we're seeing right now, groundwater levels go down. We'll have to look into that, but certainly LS19 and MW104 are both at the down gradient edge of the property. Groundwater definitely flows from the upper right in this picture. From up in this top right corner is the up gradient corner. You can see that the results up in this corner are low to non-detect in area F and area E. And at LS10, I don't see the arrow that shows where LS10 was, but it's right here between the, there's the label for it. So it's right underneath all of this. Anyway, all of that is the upgradient edge, and groundwater flows from this portion of the site near where it says Norwood, down in this direction over towards where the word street is in Kenwood Street. That's sort of the direction of groundwater flow, as measured several times by OTO in the past. They have a couple of groundwater contour maps that indicate that. I don't have one to show you right now. The good thing in the sampling results, the recent sampling results, along the south side of Kenwood Street, there are monitoring wells adjacent to the sewer that runs on the south side of Kenwood. And you can see the results in LS23, in monitoring well 103, in LS22, next to in the catch basin, catch basin 2 south, monitoring well 106, more in the center of the road, monitoring well 107, the catch basin 3 on the south side of Kenwood, and monitoring well 108 are all below the detection limit at the laboratory. Less than 1, less than 1, less than 1, less than 1. So that's good news. At least in the shallow horizon near the southern storm sewer, there isn't TCE present in any significant concentration. On the north side of Kenwood, the results are a little different. OTO has discussed several times how groundwater at the Lunt property migrates towards the storm sewer. The storm sewer is a clay pipe fit together without sealed seams, and so it's leaky both in and out. The joints aren't sealed, so groundwater, when groundwater is at or above the elevation of the storm sewer, groundwater leaks into the storm sewer, and conversely, if groundwater went below that and there was something in the storm sewer, the groundwater could leak out. But in this case, it mostly leaks into the storm sewer and is providing a convenient catchment mechanism for contaminated groundwater at the former Lunt site, keeping it from migrating in any big way across Kenwood Street. That's not a legal discharge. It's not a legal means of remediation. It is simply a statement of observational fact on the part of OTO. I would have to agree with them. And in terms of control of the problem at this hazardous waste site, it's very convenient. Not legal, but convenient. And so contaminated groundwater gets into the storm sewer, and the question is, then what happens to it? And the answer is, well, it migrates with the storm sewer. It goes off to the upper left on the screen here, west on Kenwood Street, and this other figure I'm about to show you, sort of, we zoom way out in this figure where this is the Lunt site up here. And the little red dots are sampling locations in the storm sewer itself, where stormwater and sediment have been collected in various catch basins along the route, all the way down to the outfall in the Green River, several miles across town. And the findings basically show that there's some detection of TCE in the storm sewer as it goes out Kenwood Street. And by the time it gets onto Davis and heads south, it's no longer present, or present at very, very low concentrations. And so that either means that it's leaking back out of the storm sewer in those same joints that allow it to get in, or that it's TCE is a volatile organic compound, and it could simply be evaporating into the air in the storm sewer and dissipating in the air. Those are the two most logical explanations. There's been no formal explanation of what happens to it, but it's not going very far is the answer, or it's not going very far in a location where where assessment has gone to look for it. We haven't found anything there.
I got a question, Suzanne.
Absolutely.
Senator
Yes.
Cumberford.
Question.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of questions, only because I'm not a scientist.
Absolutely.
TCE, also, like, is a hydrofluorocarbon, does that fall into the similar
No,
thing as a hydrofluorocarbon?
It's not a fluorocarbon, it's a chlorinated volatile organic compound. So
Is it
it's
liquid or gas?
trichloroethylene. Is it?
Liquid or gas?
It is a liquid. It's used as a degreaser, amongst other things. It's a very good degreaser. Use it to clean metal before you're going to do something with it.
So
it's usually a liquid, but it also evaporates. It's volatile, so it can evaporate easily and get into a gaseous form.
all right, I'm trying to figure, like, and again, I'm not a scientist, but it seems to me like the periods of times when it's high and we go, I mean, we're believing nobody's used those kind of chemicals on the site since 2010. And I'm trying to figure out how you have such a spike in, is it groundwater and does it float up when the ground's completely saturated? And then when it does infiltrate its way into the storm drain system, is it being diluted as it goes down? And are we testing at the treatment plant like we tested for COVID and other things? Are we testing to see what's coming out, or could it easily just be evaporating or diluting?
So those are three different questions.
Okay.
And so it's not being tested at the treatment plant because it's not going there. It's simply going to the Green River. It's stormwater, so it's going to the Green River and discharging to the Green River. We're not seeing it. Samples have been collected at multiple locations between the Lunt property and the Green River, including at the outfall. And it's really not being detected once the storm sewer turns south. It's really not being detected, and certainly not at the outfall. So it could be evaporating. It's certainly being diluted with other stormwater. And where it's actually going, I can't answer that question. What else was I going to say? Oh, the reason it keeps showing up and it's persistent in these groundwater and stormwater results is that there is plenty of TCE contaminated soil remaining on the property. Near surface, like the top foot and a half of soil that was contaminated in the worst areas was stripped off of the site and taken away, presumably to a regulated landfill, and is no longer present on the property. And that was done in order to make it, quote unquote, safe for people to work there as long as they weren't digging deeper than a foot into soil. And most of the people who work there aren't doing that. Only people who are doing construction are construction below grade are doing that. But there's a significant volume of soil that has high levels of trichloroethylene in it. And every time it rains, that replenishes the concentrations in groundwater. So that's an ongoing source of TCE to groundwater, which is then an ongoing source of TCE to stormwater.
Okay, thank you. Because the jump from 2,700 units to 4,100, I think, the numbers are small, to like 40,000, that's huge. That's an incredible jump.
Yes, but it started at 107,000. So yes, it's a large jump. I agree.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Senator Comer?
Yeah, and Joe, please, yeah. Thank you so much for this this presentation and involving us. So I had a question about we see the bad numbers, but what is a threshold that is, there's no acceptable level of this chemical, but what would you consider an acceptable level? You know,
well, the acceptable level, if
I just don't know how to judge. I don't know how to judge 33,000.
Right. So $3,000 is an acceptable level for current use on the property in some areas, if it's not close to a building. If it's close to a building, the acceptable level is 5.
Oh, that's helpful.
F5VE, 5.
I get it.
And that's because it's volatile. And if it's close to a building, it can volatilize up into a building and create an indoor air problem.
Right, I got that. Totally, thank you. That's helpful. I just didn't know the number 5. The article I put in there is actually relevant. It's a Gowanus. It's an article about a trichloroethylene infestation, I'll call it, in Gowanus, the Gowanus section of Brooklyn. And when I read it, it just made me, I was grateful to read it before this call. And I read it because I was like, oh my God, I wonder if this is like what Lunt is going through. And one of the things this group did was test the vaporization of it and test inside the building. So they were less, I mean, at least this article was less concerned with the water. And these plumes come and go. That's what I have understood through my own research now. Like, right, they can come, water moves wherever water moves, right? So water can move if it's, displaced elsewhere. But have you done air sampling? Because that was among the greatest threats in Gowanus, were all these closed apartments that had very high levels of trichloroethylene vapor. And what I came to understand through this is that once exposed to air, it does evaporate immediately. So they're doing all these venting things, and which have proven useful, but it's a mess. I totally understand.
So there are several buildings that have been redeveloped on the Lunt property that have, we'll call it indoor air vapor control systems that have been put in place. Unit B1 is one of them. I believe this building down here, I think it's C, can't see the label on it right now, also has one where they're trying, it's if you know what a radon system is in people's basements,
Yeah.
it collects radon gas in the basement and vents it to the outside. Use the exact same technology for a contaminant like this. And both of those buildings have those types of systems in them. OTO says it eliminates the indoor air problem. I would say that it controls it and makes it much better. I'm not convinced that it certainly hasn't eliminated it, because they're detecting it in their indoor air samples. So it's not eliminated, but it is a whole lot better than it was. It could be improved by their passive systems. So they could put a fan on it, a blower on it, and make it an active system. It'd be much more effective. But there has been resistance to doing that to date.
Understood. This is BHN's property, right?
BHN is leasing the property, correct?
Yeah.
From the
And
city.
My last question, I don't mean to take, way back when Glenn was first in touch, this is, a long time ago, I had reached out to BHN to talk with them about this. Do you have their data? Or have they given you access to their data for the vapor levels in any of the landlords or
Yes.
renters?
Yes, we have a 2022 phase 2 report that has quite a bit of indoor air sampling data.
Great.
From those structures and from the residences on Kenwood and Davis Street.
Great. Well, I knew about the residences. I didn't know you had the industrial part. Thank you so
Yes.
much. And then last thing, are you going to talk tonight about the way to mitigate this? Like, or are we still in a fact finding stage? So we don't know exactly what the plan is to clean the site.
there has been a desire on, there's been an apparent desire on the part of 401 Liberty to do as much assessment as they think is required to close the site. The neighborhood didn't agree that that was enough data. DEP agreed and with the neighborhood and asked 401 Liberty to go and do further assessment, which is what they're doing right now with the quarterly sampling, putting in additional wells, et cetera. So that's ongoing this year, right now, and will be ongoing for another 6 months. I don't know that the outcome of that is going to be any recommendation for how to clean it up. But when I transition and go over to, I changed my hat from working for the neighborhood group to the city, we can discuss how the city might approach doing remediation, what that might look like, what funding sources there might be for that, et cetera. And so I see that as a discussion that will hopefully involve 401 Liberty and their consultant OTO. Maybe yes, maybe no. 401 Liberty doesn't seem to want to talk. So that's fine, I guess. A little challenging, but at any rate, I'm willing to talk with them if they want to talk, and we can have a discussion about that. Otherwise, I'll have a discussion with the mayor and the mayor's team, and we'll go from there. But no, there is no current plan for remediation.
You got a question, Stephanie?
Sorry, I'm just catching up on these details, so sorry for all my
No,
questions.
it's a good thing for everyone. Thank you.
Hi. Yes, my name is Stephanie Duclos. I was looking at your flow chart, and I'm assuming the red dots are where they found concentrations of TCE, but I just want to clarify that's what we're looking at. OTO was out testing catch basins in my neighborhood, and that's CB-12. That shows up as a red dot on that map. So we have a lot of flooding around here, and the water all recedes back into our homes. So I want to be included, seeing as how I saw OTO out there not long ago testing our catch basins, and I have concerns. Thank you.
Right, so that catch basin is, if you can see my cursor in the center of this map, a little more than halfway to the Green River. And the results I've seen to date indicate that there aren't detectable concentrations of TCE in that in the stormwater at that location. Red is simply the location. It doesn't mean it was detected there. It's just a way to make it visible on this map.
Is there a way to receive the reports for that particular catch basin testing?
You can request it directly from OTO, or you can request it from me, and I will send it to you as soon as OTO sends it to the mayor and the Lunt neighborhood group. I'd be happy to send it to you.
Thank you.
I'll put my email in the chat when I'm done speaking, and then you can email me a request. How's that sound?
Sounds great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we will be making all past and future reports that are handed to the city available if people request them. Councilor Mias, you have a question?
Yes, hi, my name is Wahab Minas. I'm an at-large councilor here in Greenfield. I wanted to ask this question because I've come across many constituents who've raised this concern. Has there been some sort of a study done on the adverse health effects of this contamination for the community around here. Has there been some sort of a study? Has that been made public? If there isn't one, when is the city going to do it? Because since this contamination, my family personally has had an uptick in adverse health conditions, as has my neighborhood and many of my constituents when I talk to them. So is there such a study in the process? Has it been done? Has it been made public? Or what is the plan to go about that? Thank you.
I do not
You're
have,
muted.
I don't have results of such a study, but I think there's some other people on the call that can better answer this question. Yes?
There's, I'm going to take this. There have been scientific studies done about the adverse health effects of trichloroethylene. And the way that it's most harmful is the vapor intrusion. We have not done a study by neighborhood by any matter of means. We are looking at where the concentrations of this are, and the concentrations are highest right where the BHN and the detox are cited. So to answer your question, Councilor Minhas, no, as far as any neighborhood study, but we didn't have any indication either that it was in those neighborhoods. The wells on the south side of Kenwood Street are now lower, but I would have to say from listening to Lyons Wittens, my concerns more are in the area where the detox and BHN is, and also that the last the last indoor air samples, I think, were a couple of years ago. So if the water sampling is higher, I would imagine the indoor air sampling, if it was done now, might be higher as well. Am I correct on that, Lyons?
That would certainly be, it's a distinct possibility. I haven't seen indoor air sample results concurrent with, this year, with concurrent with these new groundwater results. There may be some, but I'm not aware of them yet. I'm going to look up when the last, I'm not going to look it up right now.
So can I just ask if,
so
can I just ask if the city, the health department, or anyone who's involved in this is like, so there's no plans to do any sort of a study to observe whether or not this has, I understand that the chemical itself has been proven to cause adverse health effects. I think it would be in the neighborhood's best interest, in the city's best interest, to do a study so people can be put to peace with the fact that I believe that there has been an uptick in adverse health conditions in the city and around my neighborhood. I think it would be beneficial. I don't know what the specific process would be. And again, I just want to thank the mayor's office for taking a stance on this and pushing this forward. I know this is something that you were working on a lot when you were a counselor as well. And if there's anything that you would like for us to do on the council to help you support this effort, please let us know. But my specific question is just, is there going to be a study? Do we have plans to make such a study? Can we do that? That would be great. Thank you.
in answer to the mayor's question, the last time the indoor air was sampled in the Lunt buildings was in 2019. That's the last published data inside those buildings from inside indoor air results. That's a few years ago. can't see the whole list right now of everyone who's on this Zoom. Is there anyone present from 401 Liberty or OTO who can shed any more light on the sampling that's to happen this year?
I don't believe there is, Lyons.
Okay. Very well.
I thought I saw someone from OTO. They're no longer on.
Well, they may or may not.
Okay, all right, very good.
They may or may not choose to speak if
Okay.
they're present.
I can speak. I'm sorry. I'm in my car dropping my son off at a band practice. This is Lori McCarthy with O'Reilly Talbot and Oak and Associates. We
Hi,
do
Lori.
and I apologize. We did send the August data, but it didn't get out until yesterday. So I understand if folks haven't had a chance to look at it yet. But I also did want to confirm that in accordance with the phase 2 scope of work that was approved by DEP, we are intending to collect air samples at the end of this month or beginning of October.
From the on-site buildings.
The sampling plan, I believe, is the residential buildings only that are to the south of the 298 property. I sorry, I don't have the information in front of me to tell you where we had intended, but of course, it is dependent upon the residents allowing us to collect the samples. So they have the option to not have samples collected if they don't want to have samples collected in their home. So, but we will be reaching out to all of the residents that are in the sampling plan within the next week to 2 weeks, I would say, to schedule those samples.
Great. Thank you for the update.
Sure.
Mary, you had a question, if you want to go ahead.
No, I
Yeah,
just, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm all set.
This is Mary Chickman. I have a few questions that I jotted down. I'm not sure of the logical order to ask them, but one question that popped up when Lyons was talking was about the passive system that is currently in place inside the building. And he mentioned that an active system, so the installation of fans would be a better way to deal with the TCEs that are, I guess, vaporized or whatever you want to say. And Lyons, you indicated somebody was resisting this. I mean, doesn't the city own this building? So isn't it the city who can make the decision to install these fans or whatever needs to be installed? And I have a few follow-up questions, but I'd like to hear your answer to this.
That is a good point, and I would say if that's certainly something that we can explore, that I can explore with the city. It's a little complicated because it's a leased facility, and we would need to make some specific arrangements about that. And once the passive system is activated, it would require quarterly sampling. And so there would need to be not only a commitment to activate the system and do the construction involved in that, but also a commitment to do the quarterly sampling, and there would have to be a discussion about how that was paid. You know, where did the funds for that come from?
Just to add on to that a little bit, though, in our discussion with DEP, they were actually leaning more to the passive system instead of actually having an active system. So they were leaning more with the passive system. So actually what is there now, they were actually more happy with than having it activated when we spoke with them.
Okay.
To follow up on what Michael just said, is there some sort of documentation or anything like that that would show us that that's the better system to use inside those buildings?
So in the future, just to kind of keep us moving along here anyways, I do have some answers to some of these after Ryan's presentation. We did have a meeting with DEP. They are available to meet with the whole group again. We're just going to kind of set up when we want to do that, either after February on phase 2, when they get the results. Seems like it might be the better time because they'll have more information from getting the phase 2 results and have more answers for us. But they are happy to meet with us, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer any questions that anybody has on why they feel that way.
Okay, I have 2 other questions. One's related to OTO and Lyons. Once you are hired or officially, in place with the city as the city's licensed site professional, what is OTO? What's their role going to be, and why is OTO doing this sampling? And can the city or you, Lyons, participate in those samplings and get our own testing done so we know what's going on? And I guess to summarize, is OTO going away once you come on board as the licensed site professional of record for the city of Greenfield?
The short answer is no, they're not going away. Lori McCarthy is the licensed site professional of record for the site, and she will continue to be the licensed site professional of record. My capacity is advisor to the mayor and the city. I happen to be a licensed site professional, but I will not be the licensed site professional of record.
Okay, thank you. And one last question. You mentioned,
to further clarify that, the city and OTO can work, and 401 Liberty can work together and do parallel investigations and parallel projects. We can work together on projects if they so desire. To date, 401 Liberty has wanted to do their own thing in their own way and has hired OTO to do that. And that is their prerogative.
thank you, Lyons. And my last question is around, you talked about, if there were additional fans or whatever installed inside, that there would have to be monitoring, et cetera. And you hinted at, what the resources might be to do that. And so my question is, what amount of funding is currently committed to work on Lunt? So whether that's paying for Lyons' salary, whether it's paying for testing, whether it's paying for additional, equipment or whatever, what's the level of funding that's committed by the city? And what are the resources? What can we expect to see in terms of staffing that would be dedicated to cleaning this site up?
I can speak to that a little bit. So right now, like I said, our biggest concern is getting the phase 2 results to DEP and getting those results. Once we get those results, it's going to kind of lead us in the direction of either we're going to do, be looking for money to do remediation, or we're going to be looking for money to do more testing and more assessments. When it comes to them doing more assessments, the town can certainly apply for more grants to do more assessments on the project. So that's probably where we would be getting that money and be looking for that for. As far as dedicated staff from the city, I mean, I'm helping run the public involvement plan group. Like Lyons said, he's going to be an advisor to the city to help, look over what OTO is doing, just to make sure that we're doing as much as we need to do, and that, we're getting the information that we need. And then, unfortunately, I don't have a ton of staff that can be dedicated to this. It's kind of me being here on these groups. Otherwise, all I have is, I have one full-time inspector and some other people that are through a grant program But, you know, we will certainly look for more money and other grants and programs if we have to do more assessments. But right now we're kind of on a hold to see what happens with phase 2 if DEP approves that. If they approve that, then we can move forward with, trying to look for the remediation instead of more assessments.
And the assessment work that is being done this year is being done by 401 Liberty. They're paying OTO.
And the city has committed funds to pay Lions. I just wanted to say that we just reached a financial agreement. I think it's about 10, don't quote me on that. I don't have the paper in front of me. I think it's about $10,000. And what would be done would be dependent on what was found. But I think I share the concerns of the people that are on this call, and that's why we're here together. I just wanted to say that. Many of the questions that were raised, I share your thoughts. Thank you.
Susanna, you want to go quick? I know you had a question.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. Thank you. How many houses, residences are involved here? I see, on this map, it's kind of zoomed in a little bit. How many houses? Approximately. I mean, are we talking 20? Are we talking a dozen? Are we talking more than that?
The ones that are highlighted, I've just zoomed out a little bit. The ones that are highlighted in green and purple and blue are houses that have been sampled. And I'm not sure how many of those are in the sampling that will be done in the next couple of weeks, but certainly a good number of them.
All right, and just in a ballpark, and I never hold people the numbers when I say ballpark, but if we really wanted to roll up our sleeves and get in there and do some remediation on that site, are we talking 3 million, 30 million, or 300 million? What's the range here that we're talking about to do this right?
So it's going to really be dependent on, what comes out of the phase 2 results. Once DEP gives us, the answer on all that, then we can get a better idea of, how much it will cost altogether.
So there's been no assessment so far financially for what would have to be done or anything like that.
I'm not sure if they ever did one before, but that's what the phase 2 really is. It's really getting the assessment and the testing to figure out, what the remediation is going to have to be.
All right. Thank you. And as far as finding out about adverse health effects on communities, has a survey been sent out to people in the neighborhood? Have we been looking to see if there's any concentrations of, cancer, reproductive problems, or anything like that due to this? Or have we not gotten there yet?
We haven't gotten there yet. Go ahead, Lions. Go ahead.
To date, they've sampled indoor air at a number of homes. Some homes multiple times, and there's another round coming up in the next month because it's been a little while since the last round. Only 1 or 2 homes had any detections at all in my recollection, and they weren't extraordinarily high. They were rather low. But those are snapshots in time. And anyway, a survey hasn't been done to my knowledge.
Marianne, you got a question?
House by house in the neighborhood, no.
Yeah, yeah, I have a question which maybe the health director was gonna get to this, but it must have been at least 2 years ago now, when there was a call maybe to start the PIP process initially, but we had like the legal team and I think OTO on the call as well, but there was talk of starting the process with DPH to see if there was cluster of disease in those neighborhoods. And so I'm wondering if there's an update on that. And then I'm also wondering, there's two other pieces. One is, and forgive me that I'm fuzzy on this because it's been a while since I've dipped back into this issue, but there was very soon the city was supposed to hand over this property or formally sell this property if I'm right. And so I'm just wondering, like, who by lease or by contract or by whatever we have with 401 Liberty or BHN, like who is actually responsible? Because at the meeting, 2 years ago, they said, oh, it would be $20,000 for this active system to be put into place. And at that point, they said that would solve the air quality issues. And they just said straight up, I said, well, why don't you just do that? Like, be a good neighbor, 20 grand, install it. And they were like, we're not going to do that. We want more testing, air quality, testing, which now we're like finding out hasn't actually been done in 5 years. So I'm just wondering who is legally responsible by contract for keeping this building appropriately habitable. And then the question about cluster disease, like I thought there was talk in the past that DPH would help us with that. And so is that true or happening?
I mean, I haven't heard anything like that, but I've only been here 6 months. I don't know if Susan can speak on that a little.
Yeah, I can. LNAG put in a proposal to the EPA about a year and a half ago to do a door-by-door survey. And the health department was going to work with us on that. We did not get the grant. And so as a result, that door-to-door has not happened. And the reason we didn't get the grant, they really liked what we put together, but it was that we did not have enough data from the site, and that was because we couldn't get the data from 401 Liberty at the time. So part of this has been the lack of data that we have not been able to have at this time.
And to speak to the who's responsible, so right now the town owns the site, so the town would be responsible as far as DEP is concerned. I can't speak towards the lease agreement. That would be a legal question on what was really in that and discussed. But as it sits right now, DEP, we are the property owner, so we are responsible. Glenn, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate everyone offering up this information. And I have a pretty technical question really for Lyons, but I didn't want to let it go by since he may be ending his part soon. And that is, in the past, we've talked about installing data loggers in the groundwater monitoring wells so that we would be able to characterize the groundwater surface elevation across the site. And that would allow us to determine the seasonal fluctuations. So the data loggers would take a reading every day of the groundwater level. And we would be able to determine how that groundwater is rising and falling. And that tells us which direction it moves in during different times of the year. So it would give us the flow direction for both the shallow groundwater and the deeper groundwater flows that may be going underneath the storm drain system. And I'm wondering if that has been done, and maybe Lori could explain why something like that hasn't been done. Those data loggers are relatively inexpensive. The batteries last for a year or two, and the data then can be put into a computer model so that you can get an actual 3D model of the groundwater rising and falling, and also the flow changes over different seasons. The groundwater may flow in a different direction in the winter than it does in the summer. So I'm curious about why that hasn't been done. It's something we've been talking about for just about 2 years now. Anyone want to hazard a guess as to why that's not being done, or how difficult it would be to get it done on the site as part of the phase 2? Thanks.
Lyons, can you speak on that? I'm not sure too much about that one. I wasn't around when
Yeah.
that was discussed before.
Well, I can say that OTO is not going to do it because it's not in the phase 2 scope of work. So they're not going to do it. It would, you could put data loggers in a number of the wells. If you chose them strategically, you could figure out whether groundwater had a differing flow pattern at different times of the year. You could do that. It's a little bit of a challenging way to do it. It'd be almost easier just to go and measure all the wells 4 times a year when you do the quarterly sampling, and map it 4 times a year, or map it in a dry season and map it again when it's really wet. And I think you would get better data because you would have more wells. And so there'd be more definition to the contours because there'd be more data. And it would be hard to do that many wells with data loggers. The other thing is that all chlorinated compounds are more dense than water, and so they sink, and it may not just be the direction of groundwater flow that influences the migration of the TCE. It could also be the contours of the underlying confining layer, whether it's the till or the glacial till or the bedrock layer, if those are in fact confining layers for the TCE. And so you would need a contour map of those surfaces in order to determine which direction a fluid that's denser than water might prefer to travel. And I don't know if OTO has mapped that surface, but they have a number of boring logs and some brand new data and with the new wells, and it would certainly be worth doing that. So that is an avenue of investigation I may undertake on behalf of the city using OTO's boring logs.
Okay, thank you. Just for sake of time here, I'm just going to kind of move us along. So we just kind of wanted to give you an update on kind of how this process is going to go now. I know there's, some issues in the past between communication between, the city, the group itself, with the leaseholders of the site. So we just kind of want to give an update, just kind of put everyone at ease that, the city's going to be involved now. We are going to run these groups. We'll be involved in every process. Like I said, Lyons is going to help us review data and, review everything that OTO does too, just to make sure that we're getting the proper data and we're getting enough of it. Like I said, we also did talk with DEP. We had a meeting with them. Right now, they're happy with what's being done. The city, they don't have a lot of data because it's not required of OTO to submit that data until the February 2nd deadline. So when they do submit that data, I mean, that's kind of what we're waiting for. That's going to be the big pitch, is to see, does DEP accept it? Is that enough information? Can we start looking at a phase 3 for remediation, or do we have to do more assessments? And I think, that's where Lyons can come in. And if we have to do more assessments, the city's ready to look for more grants for assessments on its own. Unfortunately, we can't use the FERCog to get any more grants for assessments. We've kind of used up our, they've kind of used up their assessments for this site. So the city would have to apply for these grants themselves. Like I said, DEP seems okay right now. We did talk to them about the system. They explained to us that they did want to see the passive system. That was kind of their opinion right now. Of course, they can talk to that again. They are willing to talk to the entire group, and we can ask some specific questions of them to see, you know, why they feel this way. But I think, again, it's going to be more of after February 2nd when we get more data. I know we're going to meet again before that, but hopefully there'll be some new testing going on by OTO. I know they're doing some new testing next month. They're going to try to get in there and try to do some more air quality testing. So that will be good to have some more results of that. So I think towards the end of the year, we'll definitely have more data than we obviously have now. So that will be good. So we can kind of see where that's going. And then, as I said, the deadline will be February 2nd for the submittal to DEP. So we'll see what happens with that. And after that, then we can kind of look into the grant process. Our grant writer, Athena, went to a Brownfields conference today. So she got a lot of good information from DEP and on certain kind of grants and everything out there. I know we talked with Susan about the environmental bond bill. That's in the works. Unfortunately, you know, up in the state, it moves a little slower. So they're working on it, but it's in the works. And hopefully that'll be something in the future we can look at. So that's kind of where we are now, but I just, you know, I want everyone to know that obviously the city's going to be more involved now. The mayor's on board to do this. You know, I'm here to help as much as I can. I think we can most certainly look out and try to do some studies or maybe look for grants on ways we can, like you said, do some of the door-to-door, Susan, any way we can get some more information. I'll certainly look into studies on the effects. We can certainly look into that. And Susan, if you want to add anything.
Yes, I wanted to ask Rep. Whips and Senator Comerford if they have any suggestions about how we might begin to work on the process of the environmental bond bill, because I think that that is recognizing that that will be a longer term process in terms of funding availability. And we're not sure when we're going to be ready to get funds here to be able to do if there's going to be further testing, if we're actually going to do remediation, and if that's needed. I was wondering if they had any thoughts on what we should do as a community, as citizens, as a city, to be able to get an earmark for this particular project with the environmental bond bill.
Well, I'll pop in and just say, getting either an earmark or getting some money in a bond bill or something like that, we need a specific description of something. We can't just say we want $3 million to put at the Lunt property or whatever. We need either it's for assessment, it's for testing, it's for remediation. And if there's, think of this as a building project, you got to be shovel ready. And if you don't have your plan, you need us to help you fund to do the research and come up with a plan and engineer the building? Or do you have all of your plans and specs in place and you need money for the building? But I appreciate the work that's gone into this and the discussion that's gone into this, but I think we need clear direction into what you might need funding for. And it has to be, I mean, because everybody goes before Ways and Means and gives their plea. So it's got to be clear, it's got to be concise, it's got to be realistic. And so maybe if funding of one portion of it, like the planning, the design or remediation, planning of remediation, and then further down the line, putting in money for remediation, but we can't just say for the Lunt property because it won't go that far down the road. So definitely keeping us in the loop, and certainly Senator Comerford will speak, and I don't speak for her, but I think keeping us in the loop of where you are in the process, letting us know what your time frame is for things, and then we keep that on our back burner when things come up, whether it's a SUP or a budget or an environmental bill or even an economic development bill, because those sometimes have different pieces. You know, it's going to be kind of a catch as catch can and what pots of money are available at a particular time. You know, could it fall under public health if something's discovered that we need to do that? So we can keep our eyes on everything that's coming up, but you need to give us clear direction.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
And this is Joe. I'll just pile on and say, totally agree with Susanna. I'm going to put my camera on now that I'm on my phone. God, don't we love Western Mass Internet? I think we have to remember this. I'm sure the city remembers this, and certainly Susan, you and a bunch of other folks will remember. The delegation wrote letters on behalf of this, on behalf of the Lunt group to DEP, asking DEP to engage when the community was very concerned, rightfully concerned. So the delegation has a good track record here to point to. Rep. Whips talks about making the case, and we've got some good fodder to say, hey, we were, years ago asking DEP, asking our colleagues in the state to come in and intervene and ask if what was happening was okay, and making a judgment and helping concerned citizens engaged. So I think that's a good plus. The environmental bond will be out, we expect, who knows, right? But January, February, March, that's what I'm hearing. So you asked, what you should be doing. I think, in addition to talking to Rep. Whips and me, which is very good, and we have to be with you, and we are, talking directly to the administration, talking to Kristen from the governor's office, and I know the mayor is nicely connected there. Talking about this, I mean, clearly DEP is engaged, right? Because of the citizen activists and the advocacy, before the city took it over, there was the Lunt group, right? So, talking to the governor's office about what your hopes are for the bond, talking to EEA. Of course, DEP is within EEA, so you can talk directly to DEP, say that you have hopes for the bond for some portion of this, and this gets to what Rep. Whips was saying, that the asks always have to be pretty specific. We need it for phase X of the work that will cost Y, X, Y, or Z. And then we should do the same, right? We should add it to our sheets to talk to the governor about predating her release of it, which we will, as a partnership, Susanna and I. And then depending on what happens when it's released, then that's what Susanna was talking about rightly. Then we have to go to our own chambers and see whether or not there's an earmark possibility. But I was just trying to add in that there are steps we can take right now, heads up Gov, heads up EEA. We're hoping that you'll consider us in some fund or some grant fund, right, to which Greenfield could apply. There's got to be all these other industrial sites. We want you to know we're one of them. And if you don't do that, we're going to come for some specific money. Could you put some specific money in there? And if not, we're going to ask our legislators. That kind of real clear communication with the admin would be good. Now, you can do that now because they're making the bond right now. And many groups are meeting with administration folks. Again, you're meeting with DEP, so I would just give DEP a heads up. I'm sure you have, that you'd either love a good grant fund that would be relevant to Greenfield, or you'd love some specific money, or both, if the governor would see her way to that. So that's what I would just add to what Rep. Whips rightly said. And then when we do it, the House always goes first in a bond. The House goes first, so the rep will decide and work with you, and then the Senate goes second. And then we work with the city to figure out the priorities. So Mayor, I know you care deeply about this. You have for a long time. I know that Susanna and I are also talking to you about the INI in Greenfield, right? And, whether that could be, poop in the river is a problem, does Greenfield want some help there? So, you will need direction from the city when that comes, in addition to what Susanna said, right? In addition to specifics and real clear, what you need the money for, what the city wants us to prioritize in the bond. And then we make our best go.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
So that's kind of what I have for now. Like I said, I think our deal is just, we have to do as many get all the assessment done, see what phase 2 gets submitted. And if we need to do more, then we'll look for some grants towards more assessments. We're going to have Lions on board to review everything and go over and make sure we have what we have. DEP is obviously going to let us know in February if, that phase 2 passes. And if it does, we can move to phase 3, which would be the remediation. If not, then we will look at doing more assessments for phase 2, maybe possibly doing something different if we have to. And we'll look for grants in that way to try to find some funding for that. But I think at least moving forward now, I hope everyone understands that the city's, we're on board. We want to help. We're here to do as much as we can. And obviously anybody ever has any questions, they can reach out to me. And if you have anything to say, Mayor?
No, I think we're gonna see, I think it's wonderful what Lion said tonight too, about he's switching hats. I think we're gonna see some improvement and movement there, hopefully with testing as well. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. And I think all of us, again, on here share the same concerns, and I understand that we have a little bit of work to do yet. So thank you.
Yes, thank you everyone for coming. Susan?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there is a process, part of the PIP plan that Lions has been working on, that there is a review. As soon as we've got the final draft, that'll go out to everyone. And then we'll figure out a time when we can all get together to talk about what people think and finalize that plan. And so that should happen sometime during probably October sometime. So, but people will be in touch with everybody on the list to get them the draft plan as soon as it's ready to go.
Yep, and like I also added, anybody wants any of the testing results that have been done by OTO, they can reach out to Lions, and as soon as it becomes available, we can make it available to you as well. All right, I appreciate everybody coming. Thank you all. Stay happy and healthy. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.